Yeah, it was. I went into a record shop in Tooting, and I bought a single, be a '78 back then. Can't even think what it would be. And the chap in there said, "You'll be, you'll be buying this record next." And I said, "Which one's that?" And he put it on in the shop. I thought, "God, that's a weird record. There's something interesting about this." So I said, "Oh, all right." And I walked out, didn't buy it. Walked out. About 6 months later, I went back in. I said, "I've come back for the record that you told me I'd come and buy." And he said, "What was it?" And I said, "Be-Bop-a-Lula." He said, "Oh, right, yeah, that's it. Yeah, I thought you would." Anyway, I bought the record. And I ended up buying 5 '78s of that record. I wore every one of them out. I bought 3 Race of the Devils and 5 Be-Bop-a-Lulas. Wore them all out. They all went white. You know, when you played them in the old days, it was a heavy needle on there. And they all went white and scratchy and terrible. And I bought 5 of those. I remember that. There was his high voice, a lot of echo, and just a brilliant voice, I thought. Even though it was high, it was brilliant. And the guitar, I love the guitar on there. I love the whole thing, you know, the brushes. I just loved it all. I just remember at the time thinking, this is so unusual. You know, of course, later on you read that they all thought it was so weird they didn't know what to do with it. Shall we put it on the B-side or whatever? And you learn later, but back then, it definitely affected me like that. I got the records and I bought a cheap old £14, cost me 14 guineas. Back then everything was guineas, which is £14, 14 shillings, if you don't know that. And it was 14 guineas. It was a Zenith acoustic guitar. And I just sat down there. The first thing I tried to work on was Woman Love, which was in G, not Be-Bop-a-Lula. You'd think it'd be Woman Love, but it wasn't. It was Woman Love. I just thought, I'll work on this one first. It seems a bit easier to play, so I'll do that first. And I started off with that. And then I went on to Be-Bop-a-Lula, and then I just kept going. Then Race with the Devil came out, and I listened to that. Come on, blind, can I do that, you know? And I practiced that, and I practiced like mad, you know. And then I joined my first band. I was probably 18, and I converted the band into a Gene Vincent band. We were doing like Buddy Holly songs like Rave On and all that stuff. I liked that as well, but you know, I got the singer to do all Gene Vincent stuff, and the whole set was Gene Vincent. So I could play all the solos. You know, it's great. Had a great time. I just loved the way he sung. For instance, he sung Up a Lazy River, and he sang it slow. He didn't sing it like everyone else did it. You know, Up a Lazy River. Da, 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 da. He didn't do it like that. He did it that lovely slow way with that brilliant guitar playing on there. You know, and his own way of doing it. And I just thought that was, I mean, I can't listen to any other versions of that. You know, I don't like him at all. I would never have liked that song if I'd never heard Gene singing that. Had he got into the black leather? He was sort of put into that black leather stuff. I mean, I saw photos of the Blue Jean Bop album, and he's got his sports jacket on and his guitar, and he looked like, you know, maybe like a bit like a country singer or something. And when he got into the black leather stuff, I was never interested in all that, personally. You know, I never cared about the stage antics, and to me, you know, I listened to a record and I just heard a brilliant sound. And if he'd stood up there with his pajamas on singing and it sounded good, I wouldn't care. So that never worked on me. So when I heard him in this theatre, I was sort of, the sound of those theatres are never good anyway. So I was sort of half impressed, but great to see, you know, Gene there. But disappointed with the Blue Cats, because I've always loved a band, you know, to be a band, and I'm very sort of loyal to the setup, that lineup that they might have, even though he changed the lineup and it still was brilliant with Johnny Meeks, you know, it still was brilliant. But that's all I remember there. And I met him at, in another theatre. My friend of mine took him up there, so he was people a bit like you. He did interviews with people, with known stars, you know, and he took me backstage and I met Gene and got the autograph, which I've still got. And I was 18.
What was that like?
Oh, you know, I went in there thinking I was going to be very casual and, you know, play it cool and all that, and not grovel too much, you know. And because I went in there and He said, "This is Harvey, Gene," and I sort of fell to pieces, you know, and I said, "I've got all your records, Gene." Afterwards, I felt a fool, you know. I thought, oh God, what did I do? But he was very nice, you know. Called you sir, and thanks very much. I appreciate that, and yeah, very nice, really. I never thought of him as going to be an aggressive type of person by his records, the way he sung the songs with such feeling, and the slow ones especially, you know. And a lot of people complain about these slow ones, say, "Oh, you know, what was he doing Peg of My Heart and Waltz of the Wind? Why did he do that?" And I think that's ridiculous, you know. They're the great things as well, which proves he could do anything. He could sing the rock and roll, and he could sing the ballads, and do a really good job on the ballads as well. Sing dead in tune. I mean, people now all go through auto-tune. He's dead in tune, sings it lovely, he's got a lovely voice. And of course, Cliff Gallup could play anything as well, so he played great in the slow ones. So that's the way I judged it. So when I actually saw him, you know, if I'd seen him tearing it up on stage, and I would have probably not been not impressed, but it wouldn't have impressed me either way. I just sort of thought of him as a quiet guy. So when I met him and he was quiet, I imagined he would be like that from his records. And because I was a quiet bloke at the time, shy, so I could relate to him really. He wasn't this outrageous guy that, you know, some of them tried to act like, you know. I met him that first time when I was 18, and then I was probably about 23, and I met him with Chaz Hodges and Mick Underwood, and Gene wanted a backing band to back him on some TV up in Manchester. And I think we were either playing or they didn't want to pay the money, or something went wrong, you know. It didn't work out. But the first thing I said to Gene, Chaz said, "Oh, he said, this is Harvey, Gene, he's your biggest fan, you know." I was all pleased, you know. And I said, when he was asking us to back him, I said, "Why haven't you got the Blue Caps with you?" That's all I could think of. You know, why haven't you got the Blue Caps? And he sort of said, "Oh, obviously I didn't know the politics, what had all gone wrong, you know." And I said, what happened to Cliff Gallup? Why haven't you got him with you and all this stuff?" And he said he got fed up with travelling and he didn't want to go on the road anymore. And I didn't know anything about Johnny Meeks really. I don't think I even knew. I might have known Johnny Meeks' name then, but I wasn't so sure about who was in the band. Because the photographs were misleading. You know, you'd see Russell Williford and think that was Cliff Gallup, and it wasn't. And then you'd see pictures later in the '57 lineup, and you'd see Grady Owen or whatever his name was, and he looked like Russell Williford to me, which I thought was Cliff Gallup. So I still thought, and Johnny Meeks, I thought, well, what's he doing in there? You know, and I was getting confused with who was still in the band and who wasn't. So we all had it wrong. Jeff Beck and me, we both thought Russell Williford was Cliff Gallup. So we were sort of for years were fooled by it. And I asked Gene, you know, "Why haven't you got the Blue Caps over with you?" But you know, you don't know the politics back then. You couldn't come over with a band, or there was a whole lot of trouble bringing the bands over, and anyone at all. In fact, you couldn't even buy a Fender Stratocaster back in the early days because there was this law that Fenders couldn't send stuff over. Oh, it was a whole lot of rubbish. You couldn't get hold of them. I made my own guitar, and so did a lot of people made their own guitars because we couldn't get hold of a Fender or a Gretsch or anything else. So we just had to make our own guitars, you know. Yeah, I think people must have taken advantage of me as well, and it probably was himself as well. But if he'd had a sort of a decent manager that really organised it properly, treated the band properly, maybe the bands weren't treated properly, then they would leave, you know. You've got to treat everyone sort of reasonable. I've learned that with my band. You know, if you pay them rotten old money, they get annoyed. So if you pay them reasonable money and everyone's getting sort of decently treated, then you can't go far wrong. And that couldn't have happened with Gene Vincent and the Blue Caps. There must have been a lot of problems going on there where they didn't get paid and different things happen, then they leave, and then he can't get any old one, and then it all goes wrong, and then he gets despondent. And I don't know, I just think maybe he couldn't manage his own affairs himself. Maybe he wasn't very good at. Don't forget, I don't really know him. Some of the other guys know him more, and he sounded to me like rather sort of naive. He comes across to me as pretty naive, really, and such a shame, you know, such a waste of of where he could have gone. Having said that, I mean, everyone's got their lifespan of playing music. You know, you're in 1 minute and you're out the next, and to try and keep going for years is not easy. Yeah, I remember hearing that, and I thought, I'm not surprised, because I heard he was drinking a lot, and he had a lot. You know, he probably, his life was going wrong at the time, and he was drinking a lot because of that. And then he had stomach trouble and all the rest of it. So, to be honest with you, I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised at all. If you compare him to, say, with Elvis, he's nowhere near sort of where Elvis got. But again, the thing is with Gene, I think he was a man's man. I think a lot of women, I remember girls back then, or women back then, who bought the first album. And when they saw him, they didn't like him. Because he was, you know, the way he looked up in the sky, and they were, gosh, he's mad, you know, and women didn't like him. I don't know any women, it's always men that like Gene Vincent, a few women, but mainly men that like Gene Vincent. So I think maybe, you know, you need the women. They're the ones who go mad and buy you, scream and buy you. Even though he did have those women, he didn't have so many. You know, Elvis was, and also Gene had a high voice. And I don't know if women like high voices in men. They tend to like that Elvis had that deeper voice. They tend to go for that deeper voice. Whereas men don't seem to care. I mean, you know, you think we would care that, why has he got a high voice? But I love that high voice. I mean, I wish I could sing like that. I'd give anything to sound like him, you know. I'd go out there and be doing it. I'd be singing like Gene and playing like Cliff Gallup. I'd be great if I could only sing like Gene. But there's not many people who can do it.